For this project, I was given the choice of a number of albums to produce 4 still life images for, summing up the message and style of the music on the album. After listening to a few songs from each of them, I decided on Matangi by MIA. The music style came across quite cyber-like, upbeat and exotic, which I liked as it provided me initially with many different routes to explore. Initial imagery that came into mind when listening to this album were television screens, bright colours and intricate patterns like those used for henna. I suppose I was drawn to the psychedelic aspect of MIA's music, which provided me with many ideas as to where I would take this task. I then began some research to help get some information about the messages featured in the album. For this, I simply searched the word Matangi, the title of the album, and I learnt that this is a Hindu goddess of freedom of speech and the creative arts. I then continued my research for some visual inspiration where I used Pinterest. Here I learnt that she is often depicted wearing the colours green and red. These are the colours shown in the original album cover of Matangi. With the theme of freedom of speech emerging, I then decided to study MIA's lyrics. I then printed off the lyrics from a number of songs off the album and pulled out key themes of immigration, having no voice, refugees, karma, and freedom. I then became invested in the idea of exploring freedom of speech, as this is the purpose of the goddess Matangi, and MIA seems to be using her right of freedom of speech to speak up for those with no voice. I used Pinterest to aid me in doing so, and I came across images of things relating to objects used to enhance volume, such as a microphone and a megaphone, as well as a poster with the message, "May all our voices be heard." I felt that communicating the idea of not being heard in my images would be an interesting first route to take. I compiled all of my findings into my own board where I stored much of my inspiration for this project. I then felt that I had done enough research to conduct my first photo shoot. I decided upon a black background for these images to convey a moody, dark undertone linking to the idea that minorities are often left with no means to get their voices heard. I experimented both with hanging the megaphone as well as placing it on a table to see how the placement affected the message. I think they both give an abandoned look. However, I felt like something was missing. After having a group critique session, it was suggested to me that I could experiment with projecting static or television interference onto my objects, linking back to my initial thoughts about television screens. I really liked this suggestion, so again, I headed over to Pinterest to gather some images that I could project onto my megaphone in another photo shoot. I liked the ones that showed heavy noise as well as interesting patterns other than just a static screen. I was also drawn to ones with different colours in them other than just black and white, as I thought that this would make my images even more abstract. For the shoot, I opened up my images on my laptop and projected them onto my megaphone using a projector. I was really proud of how my images turned out. The projection added the missing piece to my images and really improved them. I then felt that I had a strong final idea in mind for the photos I would present as my final images. I then went back to this image. I found this image really interesting and I liked the idea of portraying scissors as an object that took away opportunities from someone, as it is often used as an object of destruction. For my shoot, I hung my scissors from a broomstick and took photos of them when they spun into the correct angle. I used a projector in the shoot, however, I think that the best image from the shoot is the one I took without the projector. Now having 2 successful potential images for my final photos, I now needed more objects. Looking for inspiration for 2 more objects, I decided to look at quotes on freedom of speech. Reading through, I saw some describing people as being sheep, mindlessly following others, which gave me the idea of getting sheep's wool. However, this proved difficult to find and I was unsure on how I would get a photo from this. I then saw one about censorship of publications, which gave me the idea of getting a newspaper and photographing this. I felt that one written in a different language would be most effective, as this links back to themes of refugees and immigration in the songs on MIA's album. This is the image I took with this new research. I made sure that the writing was able to be seen, keeping in mind the theme of minorities. I then needed another object. I'd been thinking about how those without a voice must feel, and the first word that came to mind was trapped. However, I needed some visual inspiration, so I simply googled the word for some ideas. I liked the idea of photographing chains in response to this, so that is what I did. This is the image I took in response to my idea. I think that it works well due to the chains matching the colours shown on the table and in the background of the image. After now feeling like I had taken 4 successful images, I still felt like there was something missing after my decision to no longer project television interference onto my objects. Therefore, I decided to revisit this idea by adding some aspect of the interference through editing techniques on Photoshop. However, I felt like the lack of colour did not match the vibe of MIA's music on the album due to her tendency to incorporate world music. Because of this, I continued developing my idea and arrived at the decision to edit the colour channels in my images so that red and green could be seen, linking back to the goddess Matangi. I then edited this to make it appear like a glitch in a television screen. I really liked this result as the final images clearly portrayed messages linking to freedom of speech, abandonment and the themes of the goddess Matangi.